the sweat-free movement, next on International Focus.
The Institute of World Affairs at UWM and Milwaukee Public Television present International Focus, a global magazine linking Wisconsin and the world.
Welcome to International Focus. I'm Doug Savage, Assistant Director of the Institute of World Affairs at UWM. The apparel industry has often been cited as a prime example of the negative impacts of a globalized economy. Activists are calling for reforms to address fair trade issues, the loss of U.S. manufacturing jobs, and the abuse of garment workers by offshore suppliers to American retailers. To help illuminate the often shadowy environment in which the clothes we buy are made, and to provide a look at the grassroots movement promoting consumer awareness of the issues, we're pleased to be joined by three practitioners in the global garment trade. Martiza Vazquez from Puerto Rico works for Proper International, a major producer of military and law enforcement apparel. Proper employees are organizing to improve conditions in their factories and have filed a lawsuit against the company. Bob Chesebro is the president of Wigwam Mills, a family-owned sock manufacturer founded by his grandfather. Wigwam products are made by union workers in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And Mike Bernhardt, president of UFCW Local 147T, the union at Wigwam. Well, welcome everyone to International Focus.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, I wonder if I could begin with you, Martiza. Could you give us some sense of what we mean by the term sweatshop?
Voy a empezar con usted, Martiza. ¿Qué es la definición de una maquila de explotación?
Para mí entender una maquila de explotación es cuando los empleados se sienten oprimidos a causa de las tareas hartas.
For me, the definition of a sweatshop is where workers are given high quotas that it's hard to meet.
Las condiciones no son las mejores en cuanto a la calor.
The conditions are not the best, such as the heat in the factory.
Material y equipo para poder producir.
The materials and the items that we need to actually work in the factory aren't available.
Y así poder dar una mejor calidad y poder hacer un mejor producto.
That we need to make a better product and do better in our jobs.
And tell us a little bit about what the typical day would be for you and your co-workers.
¿Qué es un día típico para usted y sus compañeros en la maquila?
Un día típico para nosotros es desde las 7 de la mañana.
The typical day for us begins at 7 in the morning.
Hasta las 3:30 de la tarde.
To 3:30 in the afternoon.
Dependiendo si hay que quedarnos, pues nos quedamos una hora más.
Depending on if we have to stay for overtime, which might be an hour more.
Cobramos overtime. El receso de nosotros es solamente media hora nada más.
And we get overtime, but only for a half an hour, not more than that.
Y el día, pues, si tenemos suficiente trabajo, pues el día nos va muy bien.
If we have enough work, then it goes well.
Si no hay suficiente trabajo en la línea, pues la producción no es la misma y el dinero no va a ser el mismo que ganamos.
But if there's not enough work in the production line, then we don't have enough work and we don't get paid that extra for just sitting there in the factory.
And who are your co-workers? What kinds of people might we find there?
¿Y quiénes son sus compañeros en la maquila? ¿Qué tipo de persona encontramos allá?
Tenemos desde jóvenes de 18 años hasta personas de 68 años trabajando.
We have people who are 18 years old up to 60 years old.
Mayormente mujeres.
Mostly women.
And Bob, maybe you could give us some sense, you obviously follow this industry very closely. When did the trend towards offshoring production really accelerate?
Well, it depends upon the perspective of the part of the industry that you're in. You have to understand the basic structure of our industry is that you have the textile industry, which manufactures the raw material for the apparel industry. The raw material being initially yarn, and then that yarn is either woven into cloth or it's knit into fabric, and that fabric is consumed by cutting it and sewing it into various types of garments. And the apparel industry is the most labor-intensive part of the industry as compared to the textile industry, which is more automated and doesn't involve the high labor component that apparel does. So what happened was that historically, apparel was the first part of the entire industry to start to move offshore, and this began to happen 35 years ago. And as the apparel industry moved more rapidly offshore, the parts of the textile industry started to follow. And it's reached the point today where it's very difficult to find any apparel manufacturing done in this country. And the infrastructure of the textile industry has diminished considerably because of the fact that the business they once enjoyed in this country in selling yarn to make cloth and knit fabric has diminished because of the movement of the apparel industry. So the companies that make fabric and have moved offshore, and then some of the yarn companies have moved offshore, and so they're scattered around the world now. So we are at a point where there's not much being done anymore in this country in the apparel industry, and the textile industry is right in back of it, so to speak.
Now, Mike, I'm wondering if, give us some sense of what organized labor has tried to do for its membership in the face of these kinds of conditions.
I guess it's basically just a decent living wage, health insurance, safe working conditions, which at Wigwam we have all of these. I think that's what most workers are just looking for, just a fair shake.
But at sort of the international level, you know, how is organized labor responding to these kind of conditions where jobs are leaving for markets where labor costs are cheaper and the ability to organize is a lot more problematic?
I think it's, in my opinion, I really don't know, but I think it's just more we're trying to focus on buying American-made goods, trying to keep jobs in America, at the same time making sure that conditions around the world are improved for workers.
And Martiza, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the effort to organize in your company in Puerto Rico.
Martiza, ¿puede comentar un poco de las esfuerzas de organizarse en su maquila en Puerto Rico?
La lucha es dura.
The struggle is difficult.
Los compañeros tienen miedo.
The colleagues they have a lot of fear.
Puerto Rico pues tiene pocas industrias.
Puerto Rico has few industries.
La industria de la aguja es poca, solamente queda proper.
In the sewing industry, it's almost only proper.
Y otra industria que otra pequeña.
And other small industries.
La más grande es proper.
The biggest is proper.
El patrono durante los últimos meses ha creado una campaña de miedo.
The management, in the last few months has created a campaign of fear.
Que si nos organizamos o nos sindicamos, la planta puede cerrar.
That if we organize, if we unionize, the plant will close.
Que si personas como yo seguimos en la lucha que llevamos, lo que estamos buscando es
if people like me, if we continue in this struggle that we're on, what will happen?
Que el mayor contratista de nosotros, que es el gobierno, el ejército de Estados Unidos, nos quite los contratos.
Is that because our largest contractors are the U.S. military, U.S. government, that will lose these contracts?
La mayoría de las personas son madres solteras.
The majority of people in the factory are single mothers.
Ellas entienden que nos hace falta reorganizarnos para lograr unas metas y unos derechos que tenemos, pero tienen miedo.
They know that they want to organize to fight for the rights that they deserve, but they're afraid.
En Puerto Rico se supone que tenemos 12 días por enfermedad pagos por ley.
In Puerto Rico, by law, workers are required to have 12 paid sick days.
Y no se nos paga.
But they don't pay that for us.
En relación a eso, hemos radicado una demanda, 14 compañeros y yo.
Along these lines, we have a lawsuit, 14 of my coworkers and myself.
Reclamando los 12 días por enfermedad y 15 días de vacaciones retroactivo a 3 años.
To reclaim the pay for those 12 vacation days plus 12 sick days plus 15 vacation days that we are owed for the last 3 years, during which time we did not receive those benefits.
¿Qué es lo que permite la ley en Puerto Rico?
And this is what the law permits in Puerto Rico.
A todo esto, la industria Proper,
for all this, the Proper company
alega que ellos tienen un decreto.
Alleges that ¿qué?
Un decreto.
¿Un decreto de qué?
De que los protege de no pagar los días por enfermedad.
They have a policy internally that they're not going to pay those sick days.
A lo cual en Puerto Rico hicimos averiguaciones y ellos no cualifican por las ganancias que genera la compañía.
Otra vez, lo siento.
En Puerto Rico se hizo unas averiguaciones y ellos no cualifican para ese decreto por las ganancias que genera la compañía, que uno de los años menos son 99 millones anuales.
They say that they should be exempt from this, but we don't know how that's possible because it's a company that earns $90 million a year.
Nosotros entendemos que siendo el ejército el contratista más grande,
we know that because the military is the biggest contractor,
y que nosotros vestimos al que protege a nuestro país,
that we need to protect our country.
Nosotros necesitamos mejores condiciones de trabajo, mejores salarios y mejores beneficios.
We want to protect our country by making these uniforms, but we feel that we deserve and that we need better conditions and better wages.
Y yo entiendo que si no nos organizamos y nos unimos, no vamos a lograrlo.
And for me, I understand that if we don't organize, if we don't unite, that we're not going to achieve those changes.
Porque ya que en Puerto Rico es ley, ellos por los últimos años lo han pasado por alto y no lo han tomado en cuenta.
¿Lo han pasado qué?
Por alto. No le ha importado.
For the last few years in Puerto Rico, this hasn't, for the government, they haven't taken action on it. It hasn't been important to them. We don't have the support of the government.
Well, I'd like to follow up in just a minute on the relationship between this situation and the government. But first we'll take a short break. To our viewers, we'll be right back on International Focus.
The Institute of World Affairs presents our community with a range of public programs relating to global issues, U.S. foreign policy, and the world economy. For more information about the Institute of World Affairs, call 414-229-3220 or visit our website at www.iwa.uwm.edu.
Welcome back to International Focus. We're talking about the sweat-free movement. Well, before the break, we were talking with Martiza Vazquez, who's an employee at a apparel factory in Puerto Rico, about the workers there drive to organize the workplace. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the relationship between the management of your factory and the government.
Martiza, ¿no puede contar un poco de las relaciones entre los dueños de Proper y el gobierno que hace los contratos con la compañía?
Yo entiendo que los dueños de Proper y el gobierno de Estados Unidos, que es el que hace el contrato.
It's my understanding that the owners of Proper and the governments with which they have contracts
no sabían de las condiciones de trabajo de los empleados en Puerto Rico.
That they don't know about the conditions of work for the employees in Puerto Rico.
Hasta que yo vine con un compañero al Congreso.
I actually went with a coworker of mine to Congress to speak.
A exponer los puntos que tenían controversiales que había en la planta.
To explain some of the controversial points that there are in this plant.
Y ahí el gobierno de Estados Unidos se entera. de lo que está pasando en Proper.
And to tell, the entire United States what's happening in Proper.
A todo esto, el dueño de la compañía, que es el señor Tom Kelly, dijo que las personas que fuimos al Congreso fuimos a mentir.
The owner of the company, whose name is Mr. Kelly, he said that those of us who went and spoke before Congress were just going to lie.
Él dijo que en personas como nosotros lo que estábamos era buscando reconocimiento y puestos y que éramos personas insubordinadas.
He said that we were going, he called us insubordinate, basically.
Y yo no tuve la oportunidad de expresarme allá en la planta donde él estaba porque no nos dejó.
¿Otra vez?
No tuve la oportunidad de expresar mi punto de vista en la planta delante de él.
And I was not given the opportunity to explain my point of view in the factory before I went.
Pero yo quiero, si él ve este programa, que él sepa que no queremos que nos quiten los trabajos.
I really want the viewers of your show to understand, to know that we're not hoping that we lose our jobs. We don't want to lose our jobs.
Que yo no quiero ningún puesto, no quiero ningún reconocimiento, ni soy una empleada insubordinada, y él lo puede averiguar por mis expedientes.
I'm not, here looking for recognition. I just want to know, I would just want people to know that I'm not insubordinate. We're just fighting for our rights.
Simplemente queremos que se nos respete lo que por ley y por derecho nos corresponde.
All we're asking for is that we have our rights under the law and as human beings.
Y que nosotros entendemos que una compañía que genera tantas ganancias anuales sí puede cumplir con la ley y tener a los empleados más contentos para que puedan producir mejor y dar mejor calidad.
And I believe that a company that earns so much money every year can afford to follow the law and treat its workers with respect.
Well, Mike, I'm wondering, when you talk with your members and people in the industry who perhaps have lost jobs to sort of outsourcing and offshoring, what is the sense of the relationship between a worker like Martiza and a worker here who perhaps has lost a job to people there?
I don't know if you can compare the two, to be honest. I think that most of the people that work by me, I shouldn't speak for them, but I'm thinking that they may be unaware of what's going on in countries where Martiza works. And as far as people that are out of work right now, I can't speak for them, but I don't know if they're aware of, I don't know if you can compare the two. It's when they are working, they're being, at least by us, they're being treated with respect. They're being given decent wages, decent working conditions, safe working conditions. So I don't know if you can really compare the two.
But I think, is there a sense, do you think sometimes that that somehow the workers who are working in other countries are in some way responsible for the loss of American jobs?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the workers as much as the big corporations. I mean, the workers in any country, the bottom line is they have to work to support their families.
No, I guess what I'm getting to is what is the sense of solidarity between workers here and workers there? Is there a sense that,
I believe so, yeah. I think we would like to see their conditions improve. Obviously, that's why we're here, to advocate for this. I mean, it's a human right, for one thing. It's not just about getting a decent wage and health. It's human rights, treating people with respect.
Well, and Bob, I think one question a lot of people are asking is, given all these conditions that we've talked about, how is it that Wigwam is able to maintain its manufacturing here in Wisconsin and with a union workforce?
We are probably somewhat of an anomaly in this day and age, and the reason that our company is located where it is and we're still operating is there's a couple of reasons for it. Number one, we are family owned, and our family likes living in Wisconsin and Sheboygan, so we've done our best to maintain our operations there. Secondly, we have a brand name. We sell under the brand name Wigwam, and without the brand we have, we could not have survived as long as we have or continue in the future. And we've aggressively promoted this brand, and we're not beholden necessarily onto the whims of some of the larger retailers that buy under their own brand label. And are much more demanding of the people whom they buy from when they buy under their own label than they are if they buy under a branded label.
So in demanding in terms of price?
Yes. Price is a huge issue. And you have to also realize in the total scheme of things that when you view the position of the U.S. government, that they're dealing with the situation in our country, and they're trying to, through the State Department, to deal with the situation in other countries. And there are trade-offs that have occurred historically in negotiating treaties with various countries that have, in effect, sacrificed some of the industries in our countries in terms of our relationship with these other countries. A good example might be Pakistan. I'm just using that as an example. Right now we are seeking to quell the efforts of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and we're working closely with the Pakistani government, and we're asking them to be allied with us to do this. And in turn for doing this, and to elicit their cooperation, we're offering them such things as zones in their country in which they can make product that can be shipped to the United States and sold in this country. And so if that happens, and that is happening, inevitably jobs in this country will, based on the products they're making, jobs in this country will suffer because we can't compete in this country with the kinds of the prices that they can offer things at.
Well, this brings up an interesting point. The argument is often made that with labor costs being what they are in this country, you can't be competitive paying comparable wages elsewhere. But do you have any sense of how much the labor costs of a given garment actually add to the finished price at the retail level? And what percentage of all of the costs that go into any garment are labor?
Well, it all depends upon the garment. There isn't any one magic number that can be used. In our case, we make a product with a very high valued material content, and we don't make inexpensive socks which are sold as a commodity, and thus our labor costs are a smaller percentage of the cost of the product than they are if we made inexpensive cotton socks. So yes, you can compete if you employ modern equipment, and if you employ modern methods, and if you use technology, you can compete to a point. But we're also not only competing with dealing with the cost of labor, we're dealing with the cost of health care that other countries don't provide their employees. For example, in our company, it's costing us about $8,000 per year per employee for their health care. We're dealing with environmental regulations in this country that other countries don't have. We're dealing with the issue of, for example, in China, the fact that they've fixed the value of their currency and not allowed it to float freely. So we have the currency exchange. And also we're one of, I think, 2 countries in what's called the most developed countries in the world that don't have a value-added tax. And countries like China have a value-added tax. And so that means that when their manufacturers export to other countries, these manufacturers get a refund. And when these products come into this country, we don't have a tax. And if we export to China, people that buy products from us in China have to pay the value-added tax. The United States doesn't have that. So we're dealing with a number of factors, not only labor costs, in being globally competitive. It's a difficult issue.
Well, it certainly is that. Well, we've got just a few minutes left. I'm wondering, Martiza, if you would have any message to just the average American who's out shopping for things. I know your factory sells to the military, but just in general, for someone when they're thinking of making a purchase of clothes, what kinds of things would you have them keep in mind?
Martiza, ¿tiene usted un mensaje para las personas en los Estados Unidos cuando van a ir de compras? Un mensaje para ellos en qué deben pensar cuando ir de compras. Yo sé que trabaja para una compañía que produce productos para el militario, pero para el americano ordinario, ¿qué es su mensaje?
And we have less than a minute.
Menos de un minuto.
Yo entiendo que la persona cuando va a comprar algún producto,
When somebody goes to shop for anything,
lea la etiqueta
look at the tag
y que sepa que dependiendo del país que viene,
and know that depending on what country it comes from,
el producto, a veces las condiciones de trabajo no son las mejores.
that the conditions of work are probably not the best.
Muchas personas pasan mucho dolor y sudor para poder
Many
producir
people
esa pieza.
have a lot of pain and hardship making these products.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. That's good advice. If you need more information, you can go to sweatfree.org to find out how you can get involved. To our viewers, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on International Focus.
For information about the Institute of World Affairs and its many programs, or to become a member of the Institute, call 414-229-3220 or visit us at our website.